116 by Chairman Hurt. Do I get a motion in a second? We have a motion in a second. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Previously, I'd ask about a roll call vote. I would ask to remove the roll call request, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 116 expands the definition of eligible post-secondary institutions to include Western Governors University, Tennessee, as an eligible institution to serve students through the Non-Traditional Hope Scholarship Program. The Non-Traditional Hope Scholarship has some very specific requirements for a student to be eligible, including being independent under the FAFSA definition, must be 24 years of age and older, married, orphaned, or active duty military, must be defined as low income earning less than $36,000 per year per family, and maintain a grade point average of 2.75. Under the current system, there are 281, let me rephrase that, under the current system, there are only 281 Tennesseans that have participated in the program under the 21-22 cycle. And right now, based on data from WGU Tennessee, they serve more non-traditional students in Tennessee than all the other higher education institutions in the state combined. These students are not being reached out to currently. Previously, when I first presented this bill back in February, there were a few questions asked by committee members. First was about WGU's accreditation. They're accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, which is equivalent to their accreditation with other Tennessee universities receive, equivalent. Next, the question was asked about WGU being located in Tennessee. WGU Tennessee is a branch underneath the overarching WGU entity. WGU Tennessee was invited to Tennessee through a memorandum of understanding signed by former Governor Haslam, as well as an administration bill. That bill was brought before the General Assembly in 2013 to help achieve the Drive to 55 initiative and passed on the House floor on a bipartisan basis. That alone makes WGU Tennessee vastly different from other institutions that may have online programs. WGU Tennessee has a brick and mortar building in Franklin, Tennessee, where their administrative offices are located. Also, the legislation that passed in 2013 requires that WGU Tennessee have a president or chancellor who is domiciled in Tennessee, which is another factor that makes it different from other institutions that may offer online courses. I also think it is helpful to note that the majority of the opposition of this bill have come from public and private universities and colleges which have brick and mortar campuses. I'm still a little confused as to what direct negative impact this bill would have on them. I can't figure that one out. Hopefully we'll get some information in a little bit. I can tell you that it will have a direct, positive financial impact on hundreds of our fellow Tennesseans. The fact of the matter is that these are non-traditional students, students who may have children, jobs, and other responsibilities that do not allow them to attend a brick and mortar institution. So if they aren't able to attend a school online, such as WGU, then they most likely won't attend a school at all. And right now, WGU serves more non-traditional students than all the brick and mortars combined. Mr. Chair, I believe that we have some various groups here interested to testify on this legislation.
Thank you for that presentation, and you are correct. At this point, any questions for the bill sponsor just yet? Okay. Having said that, we're going to go out of session for just a few minutes. And we have from TCOA, sorry, I don't know how you pronounce that, Mr. Claude Presnell, are you available? If you, okay, thank you for that. Next up, we've got WGU, Ms. Kim Estep and Emma Solomon. If you all will please come forward. Sorry, sir, I missed a name. Oh, please have a seat. So, as you're recognized, if you would please give your name and who you're with for the record. And having said that, whoever would like to start us off, you're recognized. Oh, and check the red light.
Okay. I'll do the honors. I am Dario Springfield, and I've actually had the honor and the privilege of being an instructor for WGU for over 9 years. In such time, I have worked with students all across the state, and I can say you're going to hear that WGU is online. You're going to hear that we are accredited, we're affordable, and the fact that we're competency-based. But I got to tell you, that is not the secret sauce to WGU. What makes WGU different is our faculty model. We have program mentors, and this is a person that sticks with the student from the time that they start their tenure at WGU until they matriculate through graduation. In addition to that, they have instructors. Now, I had the privilege of serving as a math instructor, and as you can imagine, not many students wanted to talk to me because no one likes to admit that they have troubles with math. But I've talked to students in Memphis, Tennessee. I currently live in Jackson, and I can recall one student that said, you know, math is just not a subject that I'm really good at. But in our conversations, I was able to customize a lesson plan for him so that he could actually understand the material better. The same was true for students in East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee. I've had interactions with students all across the state. In East Tennessee, I can recall a student that was just going through because he wanted his son to see that it's possible to get a degree, especially when there are extreme situations and obstacles in the way. So when I think about the Drive to 55, I think this is what our Governor Bill Haslam had in mind, removing obstacles for students. That's what WGU has been doing for the last 10 years, and I think that we've made good on that promise. So allowing our students to get the non-traditional Hope Scholarship funds will just be one more barrier that we can eliminate for students and bring us closer to that Drive to 55. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the testimony. Ladies?
Hi, I'm Kim Estep. I'm the Chancellor of WGU Tennessee, and I have had the pleasure of serving in that role now for almost 10 years, since the time that WGU Tennessee was created in 2013. At the time it was created, I was serving as the Chief Academic Officer at Nashville State Community College. Before that, I was the Provost at Tusculum College. So I have served both in the TBR community college system as well as in a TICUA institution, all institutions of which do a marvelous job of working with students. But WGU Tennessee, which I have had the pleasure of working with now for almost a decade, actually serves a different student, a different type of student who is often an adult, working, has children at home, whose average age is 36 years old. So these are students who typically are not well served by other institutions because those institutions were not created to serve that type of student. We were created in 2013 and have grown from approximately 700 students in the state to over 4,400 students now. We have also created an additional 10,000 college graduates as part of Governor Haslam's Drive to 55. So because we serve many low-income adult learners, we care very much that they have all the assistance that they can get, because their earning a degree not only changes the trajectory of their life, it changes the trajectory of their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives. We have students and graduates in all 95 counties of the state. We are very workforce aligned. The only programs we offer are bachelor's and master's degrees in nursing and healthcare, IT, education, and business. Those are the only programs we offer because we believe in giving adults a very workforce-aligned credential. We have educated more than 2,000 nurses in the state of Tennessee and more than 2,500 teachers, including providing more than 1,000 new teachers in Tennessee classrooms. We participate in the scorecard, in fact, that EPPs have to participate in within the state. We've been doing that now for 10 years. Our students are more likely to stay in the state and teach in their state than the students, the graduates of any other college or university in the state, and we're very proud of that fact. WGU Tennessee is the only option for the students that we serve. We are regionally accredited, as our bill sponsor noted, through the Northwest Commission. We have rigorous programs with job placement rates of 89%. The U.S. Department of Defense has recognized WGU's IT programs for their excellence. The United States Department of Education provided the seed funding for our College of Education, which is celebrating 20 years this year and is now the largest education college in the country. Non-traditional Hope was designed to serve low-income working adults. WGU Tennessee enrolls more than twice as many of these students than all other Tennessee universities combined. We would love to have this opportunity to help our students persist to graduation without taking on excessive student debt. Thank you very much for considering our bill.
Thank you for that. You're recognized.
Emma Solomon, Director of Government Relations for Western Governors University.
Oh,
And might pull the microphone a little closer to you, wouldn't hurt.
Sure. Emma Solomon, Director of Government Relations for WGU Tennessee.
I'm just here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay. Members, while we're out of session, any questions for the panel? Representative Fritz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what you all are trying to do. I saw some figures going around earlier about what I would call GDP of the individual that attends college. And so how do the WGU students compare with other in-state universities as far as return on investment for that time, or what their GDP, their family GDP does in earnings?
Do you want to take that since it's the data you collected?
Sure. If I did send out some data last week about our graduates' median earnings 10 years after graduation for those who've received federal financial aid. And it is comparable to other Tennessee institutions, both public and private. Our yearly tuition is about $7,000, and our students are making almost $50,000 a year 10 years after graduation, which is comparable to other institutions.
You're recognized.
I would just offer that when I look through it and the return on investment for the $7,000 tuition, and as I recall from those charts I looked at, the earning was higher than some of the other the other universities and colleges. So it seems that the ROI is pretty good for WGU. Thank you.
It is. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. Oh, sorry. Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Well, it's not for these folks. I would ask that we call up Mr. Personnel and if I mispronounce the name, I apologize, to testify or to speak on why they're opposed to this.
Without objection, members? All right, Mr. President, if you would. Thank you all. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think so.
There we go. Yeah, Claude Presnell, serve as the president of the Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities. And the explanation as to why we're opposed to the bill, we're opposed to any measure that redefines eligibility for an institution into the Hope Scholarship Program. The memorandum of understanding that was referred to was under Governor Haslam. WGU was in existence in Tennessee before the memorandum of understanding. What the memo did is it provided $5 million to WGU to create the WGU Tennessee office. And it also removed them from oversight from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. So their programs were no longer had any state accountability that way. The memorandum also did allow for WGU to have access to the need-based aid program, but the lottery program was in full mode at that time. It had already been around since 2004. The memorandum was 2013, and the memorandum explicitly did not include Hope Scholarship, and WGU representatives at that time testified before this very committee that they would not be seeking, and the memorandum did not include Hope Scholarship. So a couple of corrections on data. The Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities confer 20,000 degrees a year. 27% of those degrees go to adult learners. So that population is being reached out to, but obviously Tennesseans have choice, and they're going to attend the institution that they decide that they want to go to. And I have no problem with them choosing WGU. They were choosing them before the memorandum, was executed, by Governor Haslam. Where the concern is that it's taken, the lottery scholarship program has been around since 2004, and we've not had any cost of living increase in those those dollar amounts for that scholarship until last year. And as a matter of fact, with various programs that have been introduced into the Hope Scholarship pot of money, those programs have actually taken money away from like the freshman and sophomore level students attending four-year institutions. They have provided free tuition for Tennessee Promise for the community colleges. So there's been a lot of shuffling going around, but in so doing, it's limited the amount of money available for the existing students. And so the work you all did last year, which was incredible for the students who received the funds, tried to restore the cost of living, the purchasing power of the grant. It didn't come quite close enough to doing that, but it was huge in terms of how it did help the students. The point being that the more institutions that you allow into the program or you change definitions, then it puts those dollars at risk. And this has happened before. There was one other time when the definition did get changed. What was changed was not the domicile piece, but there were nonprofit institutions that were not regionally accredited that wanted into the program. There was a bill introduced that was so tightly drafted that it only applied to one school. And it was O'Moore College of Art and Design in Franklin, Tennessee. But in the ensuing years, every other nonprofit, Tennessee domiciled, non-regionally accredited institution all stood up and they got into the program over time. So it's hard to shut the door, once the door is open. And there are other Tennesseans that are at home taking online courses from University of Alabama, from Purdue Global, from University of Arkansas. They're taking courses from Lindsey Wilson. And so what you'll have to be able to do is that, from a legislative standpoint, is make sure that you understand how you would tell them that they're not going to be eligible for the aid when we're allowing WGU into it. WGU, if they were domiciled in the state of Tennessee, would not need this bill because they would be an eligible institution. And when the memorandum was executed, they were provided access to the need-based aid program. But the lottery program, which was running at the time, it was very clear that they were not eligible, nor did the memorandum make them eligible for it.
Thank you for that. Chairman Butler, or Representative Butler.
Thank you, Chairman. I find it kind of counterintuitive for another education system to be against helping students, especially in the rural areas. And I represent a very, very rural area, and we do have WGU students. And I have had some constituents reach out to me in support of this because I think my colleague down here made a very, very valid point in the return on investment. WGU is a very, very cost-effective university, and so we are probably getting a greater return on investment as Tennesseans than we are at the private universities. Might even be a better return than state universities for the dollars that we're investing in these students. And so I have a hard time understanding why you're against it. You said it's going to remove dollars, but shouldn't it be that student's choice to decide which university to go to?
You recognize?
Yeah, absolutely. It ought to be their choice. But this would be the first, if the bill passes, it's going to be the first time that we've taken action to allow Tennesseans to take money outside the state of Tennessee. And so once you open that door, then you're talking about at least 50 other institutions that are serving Tennesseans that this legislature has decided, in that choice, then you're choosing to go to an out-of-state institution. There are consequences to that choice. Now, I think you and I could probably, it'd be good to sit down and look at the data, but like I just mentioned, 27% of our degrees go to adult learners. So basically close to 6,000 degrees a year are conferred by our institutions for that same group. Now, we can definitely do some studies on the on the salaries and so forth. I think that the return on investment is pretty incredible for what you get from both public and private institutions.
You recognize?
Well, here's the other problem I see. In the rural areas, a lot of these students, if they don't have a university like WGU, they're not going to be able to go to school. They can't drive an hour one way to go to even a community college, much less a state or a private university, four-year university. They're just not available in some of the rural areas because most of the students that are going here, and you mentioned some of these adult learners, there are very, very few options. And, you know, I think this personally is a good investment in Tennesseans because we are allowing folks that might not otherwise have an opportunity to further their education. And I've looked at the data, I have them laying right in front of me. We are doubling their income essentially with a degree, four-year degree from WGU.
Mr. Chairman?
Comment?
Yeah, I mean, and they're more than doubling their income with degrees from our schools too. But this idea that we don't have online programs is a bit of a misnomer because we do have online programs. The Board of Regents has online programs. The LGIs have online programs. The University of Tennessee do as well. So they've just chosen not to take advantage of those programs and, you know, in the state of Tennessee. Just like, you know, my kids chose to go to Norwich University in Vermont. Online program. They took it, though sitting here in Tennessee, but they knew that if they did that, they would not be eligible for state student aid. And so it's just embedded in the decisions you make.
You recognize?
And I can appreciate they have the opportunity to go through any university that they choose. And by not supporting something like this, we're saying we're limiting what your choices are as a Tennessean. And I'm sure the tuition for WGU is much less than most of the private universities, and therefore makes it more affordable for them to do with a scholarship. Because most of these people are working a job and doing this in their off hours, or there's a one parent working and one parent going to school, and there's sacrifices being made in these families. And I think if we're really going to meet the goal to drive for 55, we need programs like this to do it.
You recognize?
Again, I'm not objecting to the fact that they operate, you know, here and that they, we do believe that a four-year degree provides incredible value over a person's lifetime. And that's, we're invested in that. And so I think you heard from the previous testimony that when they were talking about their increase in income and so forth, that it was on par with everyone else. There was no statement that was made here that it far exceeded what the value of a college degree is from one of our member institutions. And so, you know, again, it's a matter of whether or not the legislature decides that they want to allow Tennesseans to take money outside the state. And if you decide you want to do that, then that's obviously your prerogative to do that. We'll respect that and move on. But just, it needs to be known that there are going to be about 50 other institutions at least in line to claim the same thing.
And I appreciate you making that point, but I don't think we can operate today on what ifs and possibilities of 50 other or 100, whatever there is. We have to do what's in front of us right now and do what's best for Tennesseans. And I personally believe this is what's best for Tennesseans because we're providing more resources to help more people advance themselves with four-year degrees by supporting this legislation.
Thank you for that. One final response?
Well, no, I mean, I just, you know, I totally understand. I would say, too, that I know it's speculative, but it's based on historical action of the legislature. Just in the past, this has happened before, and when it happened before, all other institutions that were in a similar status, not exact same status, just a similar status, made their way into the program. So I'm just saying that there are a lot of people, you know, on the other side of the door looking in saying, wow, Tennessee's going to start letting state student aid go to out-of-state institutions. And they'll probably want to take advantage of it, and you can't blame them for wanting to do that.
I'll make one final comment. If that's what our Tennesseans want to do to further their education, I think it should be their choice and not our choice. And I'll close with that.
Thank you for that. Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Lafferty, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Presnell. I'm concerned about us being consistent. I want us to be consistent and treat institutions and universities the same so that we don't have one policy for one set of institutions, but then sort of a simultaneous informal policy for another institution. So I guess my question is, what about institutions, other institutions that offer a lot of online courses? I'm familiar with the University of Alabama offering a lot of online courses. Arizona State University offers a lot of online courses. I assume that those are high-quality institutions. The quality's there. If we were to look at return on investment, they would have statistics that would show a very nice return on investment. If we were to pass this bill and Arizona State or the University of Alabama were to rent a couple of offices in Brentwood for a couple of administrators, and then come in front of us asking for Tennessee lottery dollars, how would that petition be any different than this one?
Well, I would argue that it would be minimally different. I think that it has the same character. And the institutions that you recognize has a very similar accrediting body as to the one that accredits SACS. One of the largest vendors is Southern New Hampshire University as well. And by the way, the way the current institutional eligibility plays is that it doesn't distinguish between for-profit and non-for-profit. So right now, based on the Tennessee domicile, we have a for-profit institution that benefits from the Hope Scholarship Program, and that's South College. So if you open the door to those outside the state that even have an office here in the state, then University of Phoenix and a number of other institutions, Lindsey Wilson, New York University, will all then have the possibility to knock on the door. And I think, again, more particularly, the students attending those institutions are going to be the one knocking on your doors.
You recognize?
And so, I guess, so it would be a population of universities that's much broader than Arizona State and University of Alabama. Now, I guess you've suggested that the General Assembly theoretically would have the option at some point to pass legislation saying that Tennesseans could take Hope Scholarship money to any university in the country. I mean, that's an option. It's not in code right now, but we could pass a law doing that. My question is, if we were to do that, is there any way that we could provide Hope Scholarships at their current financial rate? I assume it's around $3,000 or $4,000. Is there any way that we could keep the scholarship at that level if Tennesseans could take the money and use them at any university across the country, online, like University of Phoenix, or on campus, like Harvard, up in Massachusetts?
Right. It'd be my opinion that it'd be impossible to do it, to keep it at the same level. And even now, as we take a look at programs, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and TSAC give us kind of what's the financial bandwidth for new programs. And even now, it's very, very low. I mean, they're saying that, if you pass a bill that has a $5 million fiscal note, that's going to consume all the available funds to do anything now. So if the program starts to outrun the funds, then TSAC is given the power to do pro rata reductions. So what will happen is that the amount of the scholarship across the board would be reduced for the entire student population.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? I've got one. It would still be up to the General Assembly to decide any future schools that got access to the scholarship. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed, and I've only been chair of this committee for 2 years now, but in conversations that I've had with some of our four-year schools, Tennessee's been a little late to the game when it comes to online. It seemed like it took COVID to serve as a prod to get Tennessee moving more that direction. Could you comment on the timeline that the Toccoa schools have been doing online courses and where they were in relation to, we talked about Alabama, Arizona, WGU?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, our institutions have been involved in what they call distance learning, where there was a time where you would literally mail a course syllabus with a VCR tape, and you would send it, and they would watch the classes being taught, and then they would fill out the forms. So we've been involved in this distance learning, which now, as you look at online learning, there's several of our campuses that actually the bulk of their revenue comes from online learning. So, you know, if there was anything that we were a little behind on was the competency-based approach that WGU has. And WGU is unique in their competency-based approach. There's no doubt about it. But there are other institutions that are unique in their program offerings as well. So at the time that WGU was invited to establish WGU-TN, because again, they were operating here before then anyway, our regional accrediting body did not allow for the competency-based education that's offered by WGU. The very first institution that served as a pilot for our regional accrediting body to do competency-based education, and when I say our accrediting body, I'm talking about SAC-COC, that covers the entire southern part of the United States. First institution in was Lipscomb University. They had a competency-based approach to the first 30 hours of a degree, and so it allowed them to actually become a pilot and then fully recognize their competency-based program. So did COVID have an impact? Oh yeah, COVID had an impact because those campuses that are primary residential campuses had to pivot to online, and they've kept a lot of that. I wouldn't say though that we now have less residential campuses because of the online, but it has served as a complement to it. But our campuses have been involved in that for many, many decades.
Thank you for that explanation. But just my question was, I guess I'm trying to get the timeline of when we went from distance learning with VCRs and syllabi to, hey, we better get on this online thing. It looks like it's going to be around a little while.
Yeah, no, they migrated to the online, and they migrated to new technology as soon as they possibly could. So that migration was happening in a timely manner all the way up to our current space.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, any other questions? Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a public institution in my district that gets lottery dollars. And my concern, and I've heard my colleagues talk about all that we should do and can do, my concern, however, is the diminishing of those dollars available to that institution if we take this path. And I know the great work that's been done, and so for me, that's a difficulty that I face. All right, I know there are great online programs, and I do know that I was here when we did Drive to 55, and all of the things that we talked about were designed, even with Reconnect, to give adults a chance to come back if they have not finished college. And I am concerned about I think there's an economic principle, and maybe Dr. Baum can help me out with this, the law of diminishing returns. I think I got that right. Where at some point you may start to not get the returns that you want. And my concern is if we start to deplete too much these lottery dollars and what will happen to other institutions. So I have concerns about this, and I know that I've been fairly quiet about it, but I do have concerns about this piece of legislation. So thank you for your answers, and thank you, members, for your questions.
Oh, thank you. All right, I'll ask one last one, and I'll let you go. It kind of made me think about it. Value proposition, diminishing returns, things like that. I was surprised when I started running for office a few years back, the number of people that were opting not to attend college because they no longer saw the value in it. It's my understanding that numbers are down across the board, except for one of our institutions of higher ed. Do you see a drop? I guess in your research, you guys have to keep a tab on folks that are attending classes, why they're there, why they're not. You have to market and try and get them there. Are you seeing that in the populace out there, that people are making the decision more and more that they don't see the value in a traditional education from higher learning?
That's a great question. And I will say that enrollment is mixed across the independent colleges. We find it to be a lot of times we have some rural campuses that are growing. Our urban campuses are almost all growing. Trevecca Nazarene, Belmont University, Lipscomb all had record enrollments this year, so we're seeing a lot of robust growth. Half of our students come from outside the state of Tennessee to attend the Tennessee's private colleges. As a result, we're a net importer of intellectual capital because of that. So we are pulling, students from outside the state. That helps us as well. What you've hit on, though, is a national dialogue about the value of a degree. And I think that in Tennessee, what we've seen is that, one, from a demographic standpoint, the population is beginning to shrink just a little bit. And then within that shrinking demographic, our college going rate is dropping as well. And that's concerning. And I think that, you could ask the question why, and I think there are going to be a lot of different reasons, why that's the case. But I would say that a lot of times it has to do with the attitude of the state toward college educations as well. Tennessee's done a great job of making sure that you keep your commitment to our public universities. You're funding their funding formula and everything else. But it's more than that. So we need your leadership, as well as the governor's leadership and those in the Senate, to talk about the value of a degree. Because over a lifetime, it's significantly valuable to the average student who graduates with a 4-year degree. And so, but we're in this discussion around student debt. And fortunately, Tennessee is a low tuition, low loan state. Our debt is among the lowest in the United States. So part of it is a dialogue that the messaging needs to be, I think, improved around that. There was this message out there, you don't have to go to college, to make a good living. And I think that could be true in an exceptional case. But in the general population, the 4-year degree is the game changer for them and gets them out of the cycle of poverty.
Thank you for that. Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. We hear the argument a lot saying that funds get depleted at some point and scholarship money for students go down. There's quite a few exit ramps along that way. To me, I mean, if you get to the point where more students are out there getting less money, I don't know if that should automatically be a stamp of failure. I mean, I know that might be concerning to some people, but more students getting a little less money might be viewed to a lot of people as something as a positive. I just wanted to get that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Members, any other questions or comments for our guest? All right. Seeing none, before we go back into session, if we could wake up T-Heck out there. Mr. Henneman, would you give us a second? Sorry, I didn't mean to imply you were sleeping. I know you were studying. I know how hard you work. And you know the routine, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lou Hanneman from the Higher Education Commission, very much awake and willing to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you for coming up. And again, my apologies. I probably shouldn't have said that. Just wanted to ask real quick, how are we doing on lottery funds in the state of Tennessee?
It's a mixed bag. So just take you back to last year. As we were going into last year, the lottery was in really, really good standing. We were strong. We were looking to finally have reached that point where Tennessee Promise was going to be self-sustaining, which would then, or at least within hailing distance of it, and at which point we could really open up the doors to do some pretty amazing things, which we did. And so we brought to the administration the bones of a $65 million package of legislation, which through the legislative process became an almost $90 million package. Parallel to that, we lost about $137 million in the promise funds in the markets. The way the lottery funds work is to sweep, anything left over after expenditures in the lottery program, sweep into promise. And since 2013, when we put the promise in place, really the goal here, the argument here has been to put Tennessee Promise at a place where it was not only funding itself from an earnings perspective, but to be sustainable in perpetuity, which means you need to not only be paying one-to-one earnings for expenditures, but also have a buffer that can accommodate the loss of, say, $137 million and not, basically have to go back to students and say, sorry, we can't fund you this year. So this year we are in a recovery phase, if you will. We are able to fund Tennessee Promise with our current earnings, largely because the Promise population coming out of COVID is still on the rise back to where it was pre-COVID. We'll say that we've had our largest Promise application pool since the inception of the program this year. That's pretty Herculean achievement from our schools. And so is the lottery solvent? Yes, it is. Not the lottery program, but the lottery financial aid program and portfolio is solvent. Tennessee Promise is solvent. We do think that there should be some guardrails around that. We are where we are. Tennessee is literally the best financial aid state in the country for its students. We're there because we've been very slow to grow those programs and expansions. And when we do, we take a pause and we step back and we let those mature a little bit before we then pile on again with another move. Prior to last year's expansion, the last time we had done such an expansion was 2008. That's a pretty substantial amount of time. That's 13 years between times when we increased those award amounts, as Dr. Presnell was mentioning.
Thank you for that. And when we talk lottery funds, are we also including the dollars that are coming in from the online gaming? Are those included in that?
Yes, we do. And so for our purposes, all of the revenue streams into the lottery, so the sports wagering funds actually go into our pool of lottery funds, out of which all of our programs, the Hope Awards, which includes the bookends of the General Assembly merit, as well as things like dual enrollment, Tennessee Reconnect, all of the non-traditional Hope Scholarship, and so forth. Those get funded, and then whatever's left over sweeps over into the Promise endowment accounts. The Promise endowment accounts then generate earnings which fund the Tennessee Promise. And so there's a bit of a bridge there, but those excess lottery proceeds are what allows us to then grow that endowment to a point where hopefully one day it's actually funding not only the expenditure needs, but also that buffer, as I mentioned before.
And my last question for you, you mentioned the losses in the market. Has there been a noticeable slowdown in the sales of lottery tickets or online gaming?
I don't actually. The lottery, proceeds and so forth, I think, the folks from Lottery Corporation be better to answer that. I know that they've been very consistent at meeting where the funding board lands on what their range is. They've been very consistent over time with coming in and meeting those needs. The sports wagering money, I think they actually have exceeded expectations. But while those revenues have been coming in at higher rates than, say, the original fiscal note, I think it's maybe serendipitous given some of the hits we took over the last year. I will say that going into this calendar year, we were still down for the year. We are now kind of slowly starting to see that creep back up. But again, we're here in this strong state because we've been very measured in how we expand those programs.
Thank you for that. Representative Parkinson, do you have a question?
Yeah, my question was answered. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, Representative Butler?
Do you know how much of the non-traditional Hope scholarships are not used over the last year or so?
So there's not a pool of funds available for non-traditional Hope Scholarship students that goes used or unused. The non-traditional Hope Scholarship is funded out of the lottery proceeds in the same fashion that the Hope Scholarships are. So as many as there are that need it, those get funded.
Follow up. Chairman White?
Thank you, Chairman. This may be a question for Chairman Hurt when we go back in session. But I was concerned about on WGU, the cost per credit hour as compared to our LGIs. Has that been brought to your attention, or has that been addressed yet?
Well, so it's an administrative component too. So if this were to pass, then we would still continue to work with WGU to figure out. So there's two pieces to this. One, we haven't quite figured out how to translate, the number of hours required for the program and what we would require of a student who is currently receiving the non-traditional Hope Scholarship. The other piece of this is how to, I guess, put into place a better understanding around their grade point average. So we require a retention grade point average for students in a non-traditional Hope Scholarship, much like we do the Hope Scholarship. WGU has a more fixed process of a pass-fail on most of their credits, as I understand it.
Okay.
But again, that's a mechanical issue, which if this passes, we would figure out a way and probably do that through rule.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions for our witness? All right, seeing none, I believe we've got one more person on the list. Oh, okay. We'll go back in session. Representative Hurt, that was marathon out of session. You're recognized for any comments you'd like to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a few things I'd like to kind of unpack there. There's a lot of good discussion, and I appreciate the good questions. First, in response to my colleague from Davidson County's concerns of, I think it's more of the question of we're opening a can of worms and where does it stop? I would say that WGU has a track record. I would say that if somebody else wants to come in and we want to consider them, be invited to the state by the governor. Have a memorandum of understanding from the General Assembly and the governor. Have 10 years track record of success and good data. To me, those are the kind of standards we're setting for anybody else to come in and ask for. I get the concern, totally get the concern, but that would be the kind of standards I would say we were setting as far as who else might come and ask is have you done that also? Because this bill is narrowly written to affect just WGU. And as was mentioned earlier, it would have to be brought back in different legislation, and another university or another entity would have to stand on the merits of that bill. This one is written narrowly for WGU, and they have, in my opinion, a good track record and a good history with the state of Tennessee. The next thing I would like to really emphasize that was mentioned is the competency-based program and the affordability. The programs WGU offers meet people where they are. In rural Tennessee, and as I look across the committee, I would respectfully ask for some consideration because I'm seeing a couple of rural guys and a lot of urban guys, you know, so we don't have people that are right down the road from universities or can get there easily. These people that would utilize this non-traditional hope, if they have a day off work, they can go in and attend classes and do their online stuff. If it's a weekend, they can do it on. Competency-based is different than what you're seeing offered from the universities, and it meets students where they are with real lives, with children, with jobs, and it gets them through. It is an integral part of the workforce crisis. It was mentioned earlier about teachers. We need more teachers. WGU's putting out teachers. They're putting out nurses, productive teachers and nurses. WGU can be an integral part. They are already, but it would benefit Tennesseans to have them be able to utilize the non-traditional funds. And with that, I guess there may be some more questions for me before I close, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, any questions? Chairman White?
No, thank you. Mine's really just a comment. This bill's been before us 4 years, I think, now.
Yes.
And so I have tried my hardest how to get behind this, mainly because of the sponsor. The finest person up here is Chairman Hurt. You know, he has great legislation. My concern, my problem is I'm being asked to override the wishes of our 6 LGIs. And that's where I'm struggling, you know, to do that. They have concerns, and we have to listen to that too. And so when you have that, and that's been my dilemma for the past 4 years. So just wanted to throw that out there that if I could make this happen for you, but I just can't, I can't vote for it as long as my 6 LGIs say they've got issues. I wish at some point we can get on board.
You're recognized.
Thank you for that, and I respect that, Chairman White, and I appreciate the concern there. And you know, I question. I guess I just scratched my head on that, like I said earlier, because I still haven't heard a direct negative impact. I haven't heard that yet. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is we're helping Tennesseans. We're trying to help Tennesseans meet them where they are. Our other universities are doing a great job with the students they have coming to them, but we have students out there with unique special needs, and that traditional college model, even the online that they offered, doesn't meet them where they are as well as what WGU can offer them. And I think financially it would benefit us to help those students and get more incentivize more non-traditional students to take advantage of that opportunity in order to advance themselves and be part of this, solve the workforce crisis we have.
Thank you for that. Members, any further questions? Chairman, you're recognized.
If we're finished, I'd just like to close with a few comments, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I appreciate the discussion. Again, members, I believe in reality we invite students to attend a unique university who is providing an incredible opportunity for a specific group of students who our brick and mortar institutions are not serving, and then we turn our backs on them financially. Members, we have a huge opportunity in front of us. I urge you to vote yes in favor of our underserved, non-traditional students. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. I guess it's that time again. Members, are we ready to vote? No, not really. On House Bill 0116, all those in favor of passing House Bill 116 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The noes have it. Sorry, sir, your fails for lack of the majority.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.